Hey everyone, and welcome back to Forbidden and Veiled, the show, where we dig deep into the world's most fascinating mysteries.
Mysteries from around the globe.
I'm your host, John Doe,
And I'm Jane Doe, resident paranormal expert.
and today we're strapping in for a wild ride.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking ancient India, incredible technology,
Yes.
and flying machines that make the Jetsons look like they're using stone wheels.
You're not kidding. Hold on to your hats, folks, because we're diving deep into the world of Vimanas.
That's right, Jane is here to guide us through this deep dive, and trust me, you're going to want to buckle up to this one. Have you ever looked up at the sky and wondered what if ancient civilizations had figured out how to fly thousands of years ago?
We're not talking about hot air balloons here, John. We're talking about sophisticated flying machines described in ancient Hindu scriptures like the Ramayana and Mahabharata.
Okay, so we're dealing with ancient texts, epic poems, and descriptions that sound straight out of a sci-fi novel. We've got flying palaces, shape-shifting vehicles, and even weapons that sound suspiciously like lasers.
The detail in these texts is what gets me.
Yeah.
They don't just mention Vimanas in passing, they break down different types, capabilities, building materials, and even piloting techniques.
So, for example, we've got the Pushpaka Vimana mentioned in the Ramayana. This thing is described as a flying palace that could travel vast distances, kind of like a luxurious private jet of the ancient world.
Except this jet belonged to Kubera, the god of wealth, and then got hijacked by the demon king Ravana. Talk about a high-stake heist.
And the Pushpaka is just the tip of the iceberg. We've got the Salva from the Mahabharata, which was basically a stealth bomber capable of invisibility and aerial warfare. And if that's not wild enough, there's also the Matsya Vimana, shaped like a fish and described as gliding through the air as effortlessly as well a fish through water.
Makes you wonder, are we reading about ancient metaphors, misinterpretations of natural phenomena, or could there be some truth to these tales of advanced technology?
Right. I mean, a fish-shaped flying machine that's either pure genius or someone had very active imagination. But hold on, it gets even more interesting. We've also got a 20th century text called the Vimanas Shastra.
Uh-huh.
This text claims to be based on even older sources and actually lays out instructions for building and piloting these Vimanas.
It's like finding a lost manual for ancient technology.
Right.
This text talks about 32 secrets of Vimana operation, including propulsion systems using things like mercury vortex engines and solar energy.
Wait, mercury engines. Now, I'm no scientist, but that sounds a bit out there even for a show called Forbidden and Veiled. And then there are descriptions of weapons like Indra's dart, which, let's be honest, sounds a lot like a laser beam to me.
You're not wrong, John. The Vimanas Shastra also goes into different types of Vimana, like the Agnihotra Vimana with 2 engines, and the Gaja Vimana, which sounds like it had a whole fleet of engines.
And they didn't just stop there. Some Vimanas were named after animals, the kingfisher, the ibis. It's like they had a whole air force inspired by nature.
Which, when you think about it, isn't that different from how we design aircraft today, looking to birds for inspiration? It's fascinating how these ancient texts might be tapping into universal principles of flight.
Okay, so we've got these incredible descriptions, but what are we supposed to make of them? Are Vimanas just flights of fancy, or could there be something more to these ancient stories?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is, and that's what we'll be exploring in this deep dive into Vimanas.
We'll be right back after a short break.
Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back
Stay tuned.
with more Forbidden Unveiled.
Welcome back, everyone. Before the break, we were talking about the sheer variety of Vimanas described in these ancient texts. It really makes you wonder if there's some kernel of truth buried within these stories.
I mean, some of these descriptions are so detailed, so specific, it's hard to dismiss them as pure fantasy. For example, you mentioned the Vimanas Shastra and those mercury vortex engines. Is that even scientifically possible?
Well, John, that's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
We haven't recreated anything like a mercury vortex engine, and there's a lot of debate in the scientific community about whether such a thing could actually work.
But the fact that they even conceived of such a concept thousands of years ago is pretty mind-blowing, don't you think?
Absolutely. It suggests a level of understanding of mechanics and energy that we might not fully appreciate. And remember, we're just scratching the surface of what these texts describe. There are mentions of using solar energy, harnessing the power of wind, and even manipulating unknown forces for propulsion.
Okay, so maybe they didn't have the exact technology we have today, but they were definitely thinking about flight in sophisticated ways. It's like they were laying the groundwork for the principles of aeronautics that we use today.
That's a great point, John. And it's not just about the technology itself. These texts also talk about flight paths, navigation techniques, and even pilot training. It paints a picture of a culture that was deeply engaged with the idea of flight.
Let's talk about some specific examples. We've got the Rukula Vimana, which is described as having a 5-tier structure. Imagine a flying skyscraper. And then there's the Shakuna Vimana, designed to look and move like a bird.
The Shakuna Vimana is a perfect example of how they incorporated their observations of nature into their designs. It was said to have a floorboard, a hollow mast, 3-wheeled hinges, heaters, air suction pipes, a water jacket, and a heat engine called the Oshamaka Yantra.
Okay, hold on. What in the world is an Oshamaka yantra?
Well, based on interpretations of the texts, it seems to be some kind of heat engine, possibly using combustion to generate power. Remember, these texts were written in a different time using a different language, so deciphering the exact meaning can be tricky.
So we're dealing with a lot of interpretation and speculation, but even so, the level of detail is remarkable. It's like they had a working knowledge of aerodynamics and propulsion, even if we don't fully understand the specific mechanisms they used.
Exactly. And that brings up a huge question. If these Vimanas were so advanced, why haven't we found any physical evidence of them? Where are the archaeological remains, the blueprints?
Right, that's the million-dollar question. You'd think if ancient civilizations were building flying machines, we'd have found at least some trace of them.
Some researchers believe that evidence may have been lost to time, destroyed by natural disasters, or simply waiting to be discovered in unexplored archaeological sites.
Or maybe, just maybe, this knowledge was deliberately suppressed or kept secret by those in power. Throughout history, advanced technologies have often been guarded closely, haven't they?
That's certainly a possibility, but even without concrete physical proof, the stories of Vimanas continue to fascinate and inspire. They challenge us to think outside the box and consider the possibility that our understanding of the past, and indeed the present, may be incomplete.
I love that. It's like these ancient texts are throwing down a gauntlet, daring us to expand our understanding of what's possible.
Exactly, and it's not just confined to ancient India. Similar tales of flying machines and advanced technologies pop up in cultures all over the world, from the flying chariots of the ancient Greeks to the skyships of the Mayans.
It seems like humans have always been fascinated with the idea of flight, of breaking free from Earth's gravity and exploring the unknown. Maybe these stories are a reflection of that deep-seated desire.
Or maybe they're a glimpse into a forgotten past, a time when humanity possessed knowledge and capabilities that we've only begun to rediscover in recent centuries. It's a tantalizing thought, isn't it?
Absolutely. And whether we ever find definitive proof of Vimanas or not, the exploration itself is valuable. It reminds us that there's always more to learn, more to discover, and that the boundaries of human knowledge are constantly expanding.
And that's what makes this so exciting. We're constantly uncovering new information, challenging old assumptions, and piecing together a more complete understanding of our place in the universe.
So even if we never find a crashed Vimana in some hidden jungle temple, the journey of exploring these possibilities is worthwhile in itself. But hey, before we get too philosophical, let's move on to the final part of this deep dive into Vimanas. Welcome back to Forbidden Unveiled, listeners. We're in the final stretch of our deep dive into the world of Vimanas, and trust me, we've saved some of the most mind-blowing stuff for last.
We've talked about flying palaces, bird-shaped craft, even ancient engine designs, but now we're getting into the territory of flying cities
Oh yeah,
and the mysteries of ancient propulsion
I was
systems.
all ears. So what's the deal with these flying cities? Were they like ancient versions of cloud cities from Star Wars?
Well, the most famous example is the Tripura Vimana, described in the Mahabharata as a flying fortress, essentially a whole city in the sky.
Wow.
It was said to be used by demons and ultimately destroyed by Lord Shiva.
Now that's an epic battle I'd love to see on the big screen. But seriously, a flying city, how could something that massive even get off the ground?
That's the million-dollar question, John. The ancient texts give us tantalizing clues, but often leave much to the imagination. Some describe Vimana as being propelled by a mysterious force called Vayu, which is often translated as wind or air.
But we're not talking about just wind power, right? I mean, these are machines capable of flying vast distances, maybe even into space.
Exactly. That's why some researchers believe that Vayu might refer to a more sophisticated understanding of energy or a force that we haven't fully grasped yet. Perhaps ancient Indians had knowledge of a form of energy manipulation that we're only beginning to explore in modern physics.
Like some kind of ancient anti-gravity technology. Now that would be a game changer.
It's certainly a possibility, and one that many researchers are exploring. Remember those Mercury vortex engines we discussed? While their scientific plausibility is still debated, they do suggest an understanding of powerful forces that could potentially be harnessed for propulsion.
It's mind-boggling to think that ancient civilizations might have possessed knowledge that we're only beginning to rediscover today. It makes you wonder what other secrets might be hidden away in ancient texts, just waiting to be deciphered.
Absolutely, and that's what makes this whole exploration so exciting. We're constantly pushing the boundaries of our understanding, challenging our assumptions about the past, and discovering new possibilities for the future.
It's like we're piecing together a giant puzzle with these ancient texts, offering glimpses of a lost world, a world where human ingenuity might have reached heights we can barely imagine.
And that's what we hope to inspire in our listeners, to look at the world with a sense of wonder, to question the accepted narratives, and to keep an open mind to the possibilities, no matter how outlandish they may seem.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today, from flying palaces to flying cities, from ancient engine designs to the mysteries of value. But as always, the biggest question remains, what do you think? Are Vimanas simply flights of fancy? Or could there be something more to these ancient stories? We encourage you to dig deeper, explore the sources, and draw your own conclusions. Share your thoughts with us on social media. Let's keep this conversation going.
And remember,
That's it for this episode of Forbidden Unveiled. A huge thank you to Jane for guiding us through this incredible journey into the world of Vimanas. And to all of you listening, keep your minds open, your curiosity piqued, and remember the truth is out there, sometimes hidden in plain sight, just waiting to be unveiled. Until next time, folks.